former President Donald Trump's lawyers are now at the courthouse, set to meet with District Attorney Fani Willis and negotiate his surrender on RICO charges tied to his effort to overturn the 2020 election. A short time ago, John Eastman, a former Trump lawyer and a primary architect of that 2020 election subversion scheme, agreed to a $100,000 bond, and pro-Trump poll watcher Scott Hall agreed to a $10,000 bond. Let's get you straight to the courthouse now with CNN's Caitlin Polans. Caitlin, Eastman, obviously one of the biggest names of the 19 defendants, not including Donald Trump. What's the latest that you're learning about what's happening at the courthouse behind you?
Well, what we're learning now at the courthouse from our own Zach Cohen and Caitlin Collins is that Donald Trump's lawyers are here indeed doing the negotiations for his own bond terms. Donald Trump being one of the 19 defendants in this criminal case. There are several different defense lawyers that are negotiating bond terms, just like John Eastman, you just mentioned, has that $100,000 bond set. Another defendant in this case who was accused of trying to access vote tabulating machines in Coffee County, Georgia. He has a $10,000 bond. And so the big question of the afternoon and throughout the rest of this week is going to be exactly how is Donald Trump treated here compared to the other defendants in this case, and then defendants writ large in the state of Georgia in Fulton County who are being accused of white-collar crime or racketeering charges. Does he have some sort of bail term that is set and very similar to these other defendants? Is he treated the same as other defendants? We won't know that until we see what the agreement is that his lawyers reach with the prosecutor's office here and a judge signs off on it. But once we get that document, that is what we're going to be looking for. And then once that document is in the system, along with the documents for these other 18 defendants alongside Trump, they then all have to turn themselves in. They all have to be arraigned. They have to visit the jail, and they will have to enter their pleadings of not guilty. And so that arrest process, that arraignment process, that's what's teed up for the rest of this week. Perhaps arraignments going into next week. We're going to be watching all of that play out as Donald Trump and others working around him, including people who were closely affiliated with his campaign, people who were lawyers for him, as they run a face with the criminal justice system as criminal defendants being accused of taking actions that were illegal in the state of Georgia after the 2020 election to help the former president maintain power, even though he lost this state and others across the nation.
Caitlin, let's zero in on the John Eastman agreement. Take us through the details of that.
Yeah, there's a couple different pieces of this that are quite important. One is that this Eastman agreement is the first that we have of these 19 defendants. And one of the terms here is that John Eastman cannot communicate with other defendants in this case. He also can't communicate with other witnesses in this case about the facts of the case. And so that means he's not going to personally be able to coordinate with other lawyers he might know and have quite a long history with, who he was working with alongside with Trump after the election. He's not going to be able to talk to Trump himself about this case. They're going to have to talk through their lawyers or somehow through mediation in some informal sense if they do want to coordinate their legal defenses in some way. But that's a pretty strict term. And if you do violate it, you could be in violation of your jail terms or your bond terms, meaning you might have to go back to jail. The other thing about this is that $100,000 bond. That doesn't mean that you write a check for $100,000, although I guess you can. It means that you're essentially assuring that you're going to keep showing up and that you would owe that money if you don't show up for future proceedings, if you were to abscond, if you don't show up for trial, something like that. But it still is something that puts you in the court system as a criminal defendant and makes sure it's the guarantee to the court that you as a defendant will see this through and they will be able to try a case against you as a defendant in the state of Georgia.
The first day of a big week ahead in Fulton County. Caitlin Polans, thanks so much for the reporting. Jim?
Pakistan's parliament was due to be dissolved Wednesday, ushering in a technocrat-led interim government to oversee an election that will not include the country's most popular politician, Imran Khan. The country has been in political turmoil since the former international cricket star was booted from power in April last year, culminating in his being jailed for graft at the weekend following a months-long crackdown on his party. By law, elections should be held within 90 days of Parliament's dissolution, but the outgoing government has already warned they are likely to be delayed.